Hello everybody, welcome to this second webinar for schools called Making Schools Safer, Allergies and COVID-19. We actually had a webinar on this topic a week or so ago and it was oversubscribed. So we decided to have another one, and this one is also oversubscribed. So many of you will be listening to this live, but you can pass on to colleagues that it will be available on our website and our YouTube channel. We are the Anaphylaxis campaign are hosting this webinar, and our speaker is, as last time, Tracy Dunn. Tracy is head teacher of Fitzmaurice Primary School in Bradford-on-Avon. She's a great friend of the Anaphylaxis campaign. She's a fundraiser, a support group leader. She advises us on school issues. She's done media work for us, and she's also presented at our conferences. So a very good friend of the campaign. Welcome, Tracy. Tracy's going to give a presentation, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions. Any questions we don't get round to answering this afternoon, we will put up on our website as a Q&A. So still keep those questions coming. And now, without further ado, I'll hand over to Tracy.
Thank you, Lynn. It's a real pleasure to be asked to do this. As you know, my passion is about raising awareness of allergies for children, and that is because I am a mum to an allergic child, and he was first diagnosed with his allergy when he was 6. He had his first food allergic reaction, and I actually count that in one of the most scary and stressful times of my life. And at that point, I went on a really steep learning curve. As a parent, I've had different experiences of schools being able to support my son, from the horrendous to the pretty good. I have helped and supported the schools to develop their practice along the way. It is this that has given me the passion to ensure that all children are safe in school and supported well in an inclusive way. As a parent, my anxiety of sending my child to school every day and handing over his care to another is really hard. It is hard being a parent of a child with allergies, and food allergies in particular. I do consider it easy, as my son only has 2 foods that he is allergic to. At Fitzmaurice, I have a child who has 7 foods that he is allergic to. Over the last 4 years, I've been raising the profile of allergies in schools and working with different people to ensure that children with allergies get the best experience they can. Initially, I worked with an advisory teacher in Wiltshire who had a medical remit, and the school nursing team to lead a review for the medical conditions policy. And as part of that work, I produced a risk assessment for schools to use with children who are allergic. We'll have a look at that shortly. This led to being involved in 2 further reviews of the training for schools in Wiltshire, and the most recent review is currently being rolled out. As Lynn has mentioned, I've spoken at conferences for the Anaphylaxis campaign, and I've helped them with assembling materials for the Making Schools Safer project, and I do run a support group in the area for the Anaphylaxis campaign. Over the years, over time, I have connected with a good number of people who all want the same thing: happy, safe children attending inclusive schools. Fitzmaurice is a school in Bradford-on-Avon, and that's our entrance. We have a child with multiple allergies. Now, he is allergic to dairy, egg, wheat, citrus, fruits, soya, grapes and tomatoes. He is one of 300 children I have on the school roll. The site is very extensive. We're really lucky with our grounds, and it can take between 5 and 8 minutes from the furthest point of our grounds to the school office. We are a rural town school and we are 6 slow miles from the nearest A&E, and it can often take an ambulance over 30 minutes to get to school, even for a category 1 call. We have many different medical conditions that we manage in school, and in addition to the little boy with 7 allergies, we have 8 other children who between them have the range of allergies that you can see on the screen. In addition to that, we have 2 children who are lactose intolerant. As I note in the slide, with those 7 different allergies, we have decided that we are not a nut-free school because, to be frank, it wouldn't really help all of our children. But what does help our children is that we are an allergy-aware school and we are very proactive in managing allergies. Interestingly, when children pass food challenges, they need to include some of these foods in their diet. And so it's a very delicate balance in meeting the needs of all of the children, both food allergic and non-food allergic children. For a good number of years, I've been saying that children with allergies or medical conditions need to be safeguarded in the same way that children with additional needs are. And actually, I believe they should feature in keeping children safe in education. Schools have to work within supporting pupils at school with medical conditions, which was last updated in 2017. That says that schools should have a medical conditions policy which sets out how they will support all pupils, and this is pupils with allergies and other medical conditions. After much campaigning, children with medical conditions get a mention in the Ofsted Section 5 handbook, but not in the Section 8 handbook, interestingly enough. In the Section 5 handbook, it is in paragraph 211, and it says that inspectors will evaluate the experience of particular individuals and groups, such as pupils from whom referrals have been made to the local authority, and check for a small sample of these pupils how the referral was made and the thoroughness of the follow-up. Pupils with SEND, children looked after, and those with medical conditions, and those with mental health needs. So it is possible that during an Ofsted inspection, during a Section 5 visit, that you could be asked how you are supporting children with medical conditions and allergies in school. So it's really important that we get our policies and practice watertight. Supporting pupils at school with medical conditions sets out how we need to include children, but in practice this will look different for every child with allergies. Awareness and understanding of allergy is really important. And I'll be perfectly honest, until my son became allergic, I didn't really know or understand. The difference between a runny nose from hay fever and a life-threatening food allergy is huge, and a little bit really can hurt. Every school should have a policy which stipulates how children with medical conditions are looked after at school, and this should include a section on allergies. It is best practice for this to be published on the school website. Allergy awareness requires a whole school approach. Effective management of allergies in school isn't down to one person, because just like safeguarding, it is everybody's responsibility. I highly recommend that every member of staff in school does the Anaphylaxis campaign's allergy-wise training. My entire staff do this every year. It is free. There is a small charge for the certificate if you want it, and that obviously then helps the Anaphylaxis campaign continue to offer the course. Once my staff have done the training, it is followed by a focus session for the staff who are going to have the closest contact and who need to be confident in the administration of an AAI, and that is an adrenaline auto-injector known as EpiPen or jets, if the worst thing should happen and the child needed to have that life-saving medication. The Making Schools Safer project has excellent resources, and it includes an assembly for both primary and secondary schools, which you can use with the whole school and which really helps to raise awareness. Partnership working is crucial because each stakeholder is an expert in their own field, and it is really important to understand how the advice one stakeholder gives impacts on another. This will differ from school to school as schools vary in size and layout, but should always include the allergy specialist, the parent and the school staff. It may well be the GP or the school nurse can contribute too. Inclusion, not exclusion, is really important for children with allergies. Schools and other parents need to be mindful of what it feels like to be given something different to everyone else. And a really good example of this afternoon. In my school, we celebrate children who have been over and above by having hot chocolate. With the COVID situation, we're unable to bring everybody out of the bubbles to have hot chocolate with me. Usually when I do hot chocolate, I have my dairy-free milk and I have the hot chocolate that the children can make. However, with COVID, we are having to send home our hot chocolate packs. And this afternoon, one of my lactose intolerance children had the over and above, and just her face when I realised it was her and we hadn't already had the conversation with her mum about what she could have instead, because she's over and above, we really need to celebrate. And just her face brought home to me how hard it is for the children. Everybody else was leaving with their hot chocolate at home pack, and yet she was going to have to wait. It impacts children hugely when they can't have the same as everybody else. And so when we are being really inclusive, then we need to go that extra mile. And I know that she will forgive me and will have what she needs in school and what the other children need in school from Monday. It is hard. There are so many things that we have to think about all of the time, and we're not all perfect. But hopefully today, as I talk, some of my learning experiences will help you to do that thinking. There is a link on the slide, and I know that these will be available afterwards, to Leo's story. And it is a story of a little boy who is allergic to peanuts, is invited to a birthday party, and leaves. He excludes himself because as the cake is passed round, eaten at the table, he knows that he can't have it. And the impact for our children, as I've said in my example from earlier on this afternoon, is huge. We really do need to think, if we are being inclusive, how we can give everybody the same. And things like giving out chocolate is problematic for children who are dairy or nut allergic. And so we do need to think, is there something else that we can give them? How can we enable the same treat to be given to every single person in the class without the allergic child having to have something from their safe box? We do cooking a lot at Fitzmaurice, and when we cook, we always make sure that the ingredients are right for every single child. So they won't use different ingredients or a different set. If, for example, we were making a crumble, we would actually use dairy-free spread, so the child with dairy allergy is included and not singled out. It also has the bonus of avoiding the potential for cross-contamination, where the butter or the dairy spread contaminates the crumble of the dairy allergic child. I know when I was teaching regularly, I used to do fractions using chocolate because you can have a nice treat afterwards. But again, fractions of numbers, when you're thinking of Smarties, can you, and you've got an allergic child in your class, can you use Skittles instead? so that it doesn't matter and everybody is included. Thinking about the small things makes a huge difference to the child, but it does take more work. And as I've already explained this afternoon, we don't always get it right. It's what we strive to do is the most important thing. Schools are able to hold a generic auto-injector, and this, like the asthma inhaler, doesn't have to be prescribed by a GP. We can all go down to our local pharmacist and get one. There are budget implications. There has been a shortage of auto-injectors for the last couple of years, but this has now disappeared. And if at all possible, I would urge your school to hold a generic auto-injector. It doesn't replace the children's own medicines, but it is a vital piece of life-saving equipment that if we can have, we should endeavour to have. Schools need easy access to high quality training and support. And as I've said previously, on Wiltshire's behalf, I created a risk assessment for children with allergies for schools to use with parents to determine the risks and to address these. It has been welcomed by all families and staff because it helps to support understanding. The journey to complete it is really enlightening for everybody. And this is the risk assessment. It goes over several pages and it actually acts as a framework for conversation. The risk assessment is completed by the teacher, the parent, and the person responsible for medication in schools. It needs somebody who can make decisions and implement the policy. It can be used from birth to 18, and depending on the age of the child, they should also be included in the conversation. It should be reviewed every year, ideally in June, July, when the next teacher is known, and in addition, if a reaction or anything else changes in the meantime. The questions help the school elicit the information they need in order to be able to keep the young person safe. On this page, each section is designed so that pretty much everything that we do in school is covered, right from snacks and meal times down to craft activities. If you've got lots of children or even one children allergic to nuts, you really don't want crunchy nut cornflake packets coming into school, because there is always the chance that some of the crumbs have been left. If at all you want to avoid any problem with or any potential for problem as you're working with the children. This risk assessment is available as part of the Allergy Wise training, and it will be made available to everybody afterwards. I think there are 3 really important questions at the bottom of this page, and actually they go through whether the child knows that they're having a reaction, what signs there are that the child is having a reaction, and what action you need to take. Now, this doesn't replace the allergy care plan, which will have been put together by the allergy clinic or the school nursing team. This sits alongside it and unpicks it. My own son wouldn't know that he was having a reaction now, because through good allergy management and care, we haven't had to use his auto-injector. The final page of the risk assessment thinks about the storage of medication and the where the EpiPens are stored. There are risks of having children with allergies in school, and these children are used to living with risk. Their life is about minimising risk, and their parents are really good at doing risk assessments very rapidly in every situation. Schools have seen tragedy where children have suffered anaphylaxis and they have died. And this happened a few years ago when Karan Chima died after he had an anaphylactic reaction where a child had thrown cheese at him. In the inquest into Karan's death, the coroner did find that the management in school was not as effective as it should be, and mistakes were made. And as schools, we need to learn the lessons from tragedy and ensure that no other child suffers in the same way. The children do need to have 2 EpiPens in school and on them at all times, and a backup in the office. Ideally, that would be 1 more, and the generic auto-injector that I've previously mentioned. As I've said, at Fitzmaurice, we are quite a distance from the hospital. 1 auto-injector may not be sufficient. 1 may fail, or a person may inject themselves instead of the child. Having 2 in a backup means that if additional doses of adrenaline are needed, they are available. The recent shortage highlighted the overstocking in some schools. Some schools, I've heard, require 6, 2 on the child, 2 in the office, and 2 for the on-site after-school care. We really need as schools to think about how many is really necessary. If 2 should be on the child at all times, why do we need to have quite so many? This just actually doesn't help the child to become independent and fuels problems when we have shortages. I believe children should be carrying them around the school for themselves. Now, an adult has to, in primary school, even up to year 6, be responsible for the medication. It's not reasonable to expect a child of 4 or 5 to be managing their own medication. But wherever the child is, their emergency medication should be. In secondary school, the children are expected to carry their medication for themselves. And the transition from year 6 to year 7 is a vital time that we can enable our children to be independent and to take that responsibility with an adult oversight to ensure that their medication is with them at all times. It will really help their transition into secondary school, where they just have to get on with it by themselves. Lots of children, lots of schools are worried that other children will get hold of the adrenaline auto-injectors and an accident will happen because it's got into the wrong hands. However, we should be teaching children about allergy. We should be teaching about emergency medication, and we should be teaching them to respect this. Adrenaline isn't going to harm a child if they have it accidentally. They will need to go to hospital, but our policy and practice should ensure that the children can respect where that medicine is kept. Anxiety is a huge part of the difficulties that we've faced, both parental anxiety, and I think this has increased recently because of the inquest into young people's deaths. It does keep it very real for parents of children with allergies. Children's anxiety due to their own experiences of managing their own condition, their experiences of anaphylaxis, and often the children and the parents are very dependent on one another, and parental anxiety can transfer to the child. Schools can offer help and support through ELSA or counselling, but access to specialist services is extremely hard as their thresholds are so high due to the lack of resources. Schools can really help children manage their anxiety just through our usual curriculum offers. And I think it's really important that we desperately try to understand what life is like when you are living with allergy, because as I've said before, it's really hard to understand until you have that experience within your immediate family. And every family will have a different level of tolerance. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to work in partnership with the family. Lots of schools are nut-free, and you've already heard me say that actually it wouldn't help us at Fitzmaurice. And so therefore for me, to be nut-free or not to be nut-free is a real debate. The list of allergens that we manage here at Fitzmaurice is extensive, and being nut-free would not help us. We cannot become free of every allergen, but we can manage it, and we can create safe zones if they are needed, rather than whole school free-from zones. It can become a bit of a rabbit hole when nuts become banned, because other parents could ask for the same thing. At my school, we would have to ban all 7 of the allergens, and that simply wouldn't be possible. There are times when reasonable adjustments have to be made and everything can't be the same. However, striving for this inclusion is the most important thing. We live in a world full of allergens, and parents need to feel confident that schools understand and manage their child's allergy well. As educators, we know that we have to teach children with the aim of them becoming independent. This applies to looking after themselves, understanding their allergy and living safely. I have always found that as a parent, the more the school engages with me and is curious, is willing to work with me, the more hands-off I become, because I'm happy that they can care for my child, that he is safe, and I will see him alive again at the end of the day. Investing time in building the relationship with parents, working out solutions together will definitely reap rewards. Parents can have what seems to be unrealistic demands. I have had unrealistic demands, and that's with me understanding how schools work. Often, the unrealistic demands come when parents are anxious. So having a solid, productive relationship will definitely help make your year so much easier. Tomorrow, I recommend, well, tomorrow is Saturday, Monday, I recommend you contact the child's parents and ask them questions and find out how they are feeling if you haven't already done that. Start the dialogue, build the relationship. I recommend that you have clear routines in place for the day which eliminate the margin for error. At Fitzmaurice, our children who are self-carrying medication bring it to school and it goes on the teacher's desk. If the child has a home set and a school set, then the school medication is on the teacher's desk. It's freely available and easy to grab at all times. It goes with them to PE, to forest schools, to break. At break and lunchtime, the yellow bag goes out onto the playground. At break time, it's carried by the teacher on duty, and at lunchtime, it goes into the yellow box, which is in the dining hall, and then out onto the playground, so that it is easily accessible. It would be unreasonable to have the bag on the child because they couldn't play with it, but it must be they couldn't play. They wouldn't be able to have their playtime if they've got it on them. But it must be very quickly accessible, and we have found that the system, a consistent colour, helps people in an emergency situation. At Fitzmaurice, everyone knows that the yellow bag contains emergency medication. It's important to remember to take the medications out during a fire drill and to keep them close in a lockdown situation. One day it might be real and the children could be left without their medication. Off-site visits do take more preparation, but it's quite possible with proactive planning to ensure that the child is fully included and the school is able to manage without the parents going along. A few years ago, we went on a residential where we took a milk, egg, sesame and nut allergic child. One of the activities took us to a remote area with a poor phone signal. By considering the risks and working with the centre on small adaptations, we were able to make the activity safe and fully inclusive. None of the other children knew any different, but it made a huge difference to the child and his parents. I always talk through the residential visits with parents as early as possible and then review planning and menus with them closer to the date. This helps give the parent the confidence that their child is going to be safe and come back alive. At Fitzmaurice, we cook food on site, but the caterer is an external provider. We've worked extensively with the company to ensure that the service is top-notch for our children with allergies. The cooks know who the allergic children are, and they will ask to clarify with the office team and parents what the children can't eat and highlight any problem, including a change in a label or a may contain. All the staff know who the children with allergies are. We have photos of the children on display in ways which does comply with GDPR, even though safeguarding and knowing who your children with allergies are is safeguarding, even though safeguarding trumps GDPR. The children don't have anything on them to make them stand out that make them different. However, if you felt that you needed tighter control, I'd recommend that the allergic child was the first person in their class to be served. It is possible for them to sit on a table with their friends. They don't need to be separated, but you do have to teach all the children how to keep their friends safe. The risk assessment that's completed with parents can help you work out what is the best way to include the child. At Fitzmaurice, all of the children in Key Stage 2 learn basic first aid as part of their curriculum. They learn about allergies, what it is like for the child, how they can help to keep that child safe, and how to use an EpiPen. We teach about cross-contamination, and glitter is a perfect visual for this. Each year we do an awareness session in class where there is a child with an allergy, and we send letters home to parents and carers in that class so that they know and are able to support keeping the child safe. We put a note on trip letters as an additional reminder, and the medication in the yellow bag is easily clipped to the teacher's rucksack so we know that we have it accessible. Each year I put on my orange wig and raise awareness in the school about allergies during the Anaphylaxis campaign's special awareness week. Often the older children join me and I lead an assembly for whole school awareness in my orange wig, and I look delightful. We, the school staff, do have to plan and think ahead. With so many allergens in school, we plan individually for the children with the class teacher taking responsibility for them, ensuring that we have liaised with parents so that we know that the child is safe in lessons, celebrations, cooking and trips. The risk assessment helps with this. In my mind, it is never okay for a lesson to use unsafe foods, for the child not to be included or made to feel different. Children generally will advocate for each other, and by growing up looking out for one another, it helps to ensure that the child with allergies is not left out, marginalised or bullied. The way an adult treats the situation will enable the children to learn appropriately. So the more that you can include the children with allergies and adapt things so that everybody is doing the same, the greater the message to the rest of the children in the class. Children with allergies already feel different. Each time they are left out of something or their teacher treats them differently, it hurts. It impacts on their emotional well-being, which can often be quite fragile in food situations. Imagine about being worried about eating in case it kills you. That is the reality for our food allergic children. Being inclusive does take more effort, but the positive impact on the mental health of the children and the gratitude of the parent make this worthwhile. Lost my cursor. Personally, I believe that COVID has helped many food allergic children. Food allergic children have always had to have good hand hygiene and not share food. These are key areas that we are observing when staying alert. The COVID school risk assessment should make it clear that the preservation of life comes before social distancing. This is in the guidance for schools, and the Anaphylaxis campaign have received this in writing from the Department for Education. So in an emergency situation, you should always not worry about the social distancing, not worrying about stopping to put on your PPE. to administer the EpiPen or the auto-injector. And the person that will be supporting you in that can be putting their PPE on, ready to take over from you once that first injection has been administered. With children eating in their classrooms more frequently at the moment, the presence of allergens in the class is higher. It might therefore be necessary to restrict the allergens in the classroom by adapting school menus or asking parents not to send in foods. However, this is very individual to the school and child and could be different throughout the school. And this is what I mean by talking about safe zones rather than whole school zones. The classrooms are extremely well ventilated at the moment, and I don't know about your classrooms, but today we have all been shivering. Hand washing is very often and thorough. After lunch, rubbish should be removed from the classroom to prevent allergens staying in the room any longer than is necessary. And if the hoover needs to be got out to hoover something up, so be it. As the children are arranged in bubbles, we need to make sure that their emergency medication is in the right place with staff who are trained, and we need to make sure that the staff know who to call and what systems there are in place if these have had to be changed because of COVID. Schools should have already spoken with parents about the return of medications and checked that they are in date. If not, that is a job for Monday. In summary, to finish, I'd like to say that managing allergies in school is all about safeguarding, risk assessing, training, relationships, and confidence. In my school, we manage allergies very well, and we, as a result, have not suffered children with allergic reactions. My staff are confident to ask questions both to each other and to parents, and that really is the key. My school email, the school's Twitter handle, and my own Twitter handle are on the slide, and I am happy to be contacted directly or through the Anaphylaxis campaign. Okay, Lynn, go back to you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. That was a fantastic presentation, and so many important points were emphasised throughout it, so thank you so much. We've had a number of questions coming in through our live chat line, and I've also got some other questions that I want to ask you as well. We'll get through as many as we can, but I don't think we will get through all the questions that are coming through. So we will look at those with you after the presentation, and we'll make sure that there's a good Q&A on our website so that people can see the answers to those questions. But thank you again for that very, very comprehensive presentation. So the first question that I'd like to ask you, Tracy, is one that has come in, and it's, if you've never seen anaphylaxis happen before, how do you know that it's happening and that the adrenaline auto-injector needs to be administered?
Okay, Lynn, I think what we have to remember is that anaphylaxis is a whole body reaction, and we need to be thinking of our ABCs. So with the airway, the persistent cough, the vocal changes and the difficulty in swallowing and the swollen tongue. There may be issues with breathing, difficulty in noisy breathing, wheezing, and then there's the consciousness of circulation, feeling lightheaded, faint, clammy skin, confusion, unresponsive or unconscious. You don't have to wait for all of these symptoms, and you can't do any harm by giving the auto-injector, as adrenaline is a safe treatment. And I think I'd also like to say you know, parents know that how their children have responded if they've had anaphylaxis reactions before, and that's where I come back to that risk assessment again too, and that conversation with parents, because they'll be able to describe the previous reactions, and your training will help you also.
And you mentioned, Tracy, in your presentation, the importance of all staff's training, so that all staff are able to recognise those signs, not just a person who maybe is designated as lead first aider, for example, in a school. And you also mentioned that we have a course that's available for all school staff to do, from the cleaner right through to the head teacher, so that every member of staff is able to recognise the signs of anaphylaxis and to know how to administer an AAI, because time is of the essence. So I would ask people to think at schools, as Tracy did, to think about the use of that course, which is free.
It is.
The second question that I'd like to ask you is, for children who travel to school using public transport, what advice can we give them and their parents on staying allergy safe? And I know we get a lot of calls to our helpline around this particular issue.
Well, I think the first and most important thing is to say they must always be carrying their auto injectors, carrying their 2 auto injectors with them when travelling to and from school. It's really important that they've got those on them. I'd also recommend that their friends that they're travelling with know about their allergies and how to use their auto injectors. And it's also, you know, a good idea that they could have a medical alert bracelet. I know that my own son won't wear a medical alert bracelet, but you can actually get key rings which do the same job, which will go on their school rucksack. So something that easily identifies the fact that they are allergic and that are carrying emergency medication. And then you add the COVID bit in, and they're washing their hands. So that's going to help them, making sure that they are washing their hands, using their antibac on and off the public transport too.
I'm glad you mentioned Medic Alert, Tracy. As you know, the Anaphylaxis campaign don't endorse any products, but we do work very closely with Medic Alert. And they, I agree with you, it's not everyone who wants to wear a necklace or a bracelet, though they have some really lovely products, but they do other products as well. And they're the thing that we would recommend, because they do link back to clinical help and advice. I know there are lots of bangles and bracelets and things that are on the market, but really it's worth looking at Medic Alert for that very reason, and they are also a charity.
Yeah, no, definitely the Medic Alert ones are the best ones.
Yeah. The next question that I'd like to ask you, and this is a topical one with regard to COVID as well, for children with health conditions where it makes it difficult for them to wear masks for long periods of time, such as asthma, which can affect children with allergies, as we know, what provisions can be put in place?
Well, I think we need to bear in mind that, you know, at the moment for primary school age children, you know, we're still being told that they don't need to be wearing masks. For older children who've got a medical condition, then I think people probably should be taking the advice of their consultant.
Okay, yes, that's very good advice. I think it is a little bit confusing at the moment, and if in doubt, to get in touch with the person who is looking at the clinician who's looking after the child is always very helpful, and then to feed that information back to the school and back to you as head teacher. Another one that's sort of similar: What can we do to help children who are coming to school, to help pupils and parents feel less anxious about children coming to school when they have a severe allergy, especially with the COVID restrictions?
So, I mean, I think this is where, you know, I go back to what I've talked about in the presentation. And, you know, we have got that confirmation from the Department for Education that actually children must still receive that emergency treatment. You know, social distancing is less important. We have to not, you know, we have to give that emergency medication, and to not do so would be neglectful. I think it's really, really important that schools and parents have that conversation and understand that working in partnership. I can't emphasize enough how much, as a parent, when a school reaches out to me to understand and to problem solve together, how much more confident I feel, and how my anxiety reduces. Schools have all undertaken a risk assessment, and you know, everybody who is watching this as a member of school staff or a governor should have seen that risk assessment and have, you know, agreed with that. It should have a section on managing medical conditions within COVID times, and I think that can be shared with parents. My, you know, best practice is for the school COVID risk assessment to be on our website, so parents should be able just to go and have a look at that for themselves and find that section in there. I think having the conversation with parents about making sure that that we've got those 2 auto injectors in school, making sure that they are in date, making sure that the allergy action plan is up to date, doing that risk assessment with parents, and really that partnership working is so very important. You can then do that allergy awareness training using the Anaphylaxis Allergy Wise course. You can, as a class or as a bubble or as a whole school, actually teach all of the children about allergies and how we need to look after one another at the moment. So all of those things are very reassuring to parents. And COVID or not COVID, they're all of the things that we should be doing regardless. And actually, whenever we've got a child with an allergy in our schools, we do need to be thinking a bit wider. We can't just say, oh, we're going to do this today. We have to think about every single individual and how is that child going to be impacted by that decision making, by that lesson, by going on that trip all of the time. And if we're doing that, then parents will be engaging, and parents' anxiety and children's anxiety will just be constantly reduced, and their confidence will be promoted.
Thank you, Tracy. You mentioned during your presentation about having generic auto-injectors in schools, and the law was passed to allow that from October 2017. At the moment, we don't know how many schools take up generic auto-injectors, and we'd clearly like to have as many schools as possible taking advantage of that. And the next question relates to that directly. And someone has said, we have 2 Emirates as spare adrenaline auto-injectors in our school, but we've heard that they've been recalled. Do we need to replace them?
Yes, you do, because they've been recalled. So the recall was because that they weren't working. So yes, it's very important to replace them as soon as possible.
Only this week, actually, we have had a big campaign for schools, check it, don't chance it. And this had some media coverage, though there's been other things happening in the media that perhaps have not given it the profile we would have liked. But one of the key points there is to check the adrenaline auto-injectors that schools are holding, to obviously make sure they're in date and you have the correct doses that you require for the pupils. But as hemorrhoids have been recalled, to go to the pharmacist and get replacements for those hemorrhoid pen auto-injectors with either EpiPen or Jext, which are now readily available. So I'm very glad somebody asked that question. Another question is, we want all our staff to have anaphylaxis training. Where do we get training? I like that question.
Allergy-wise. Allergy-wise. So I can't recommend that course enough. It's, you know, every single member of my staff does it every single year. And even though they are doing it every year, they get something out of it each time. And we always follow it up with just our own face-to-face virtually at the moment session where they can ask us questions in school. And then for the people who need to possibly administer an auto-injector, the school nurse comes in and we do a different level of training. It's really easy to get trainer EpiPens and trainer Jext pens, which means that staff can have a go with those. And I thoroughly recommend people getting hold of those. And when I say every member of staff, that's my site manager to my school business manager. Literally everybody who is employed by me does the training, because it could be any one of us that could impact on the child. And you know, we have to think of our own practice. People do need to understand that allergens transfer on our hands. So if we've been enjoying that coffee and walnut cake in the staff room and we haven't actually washed our hands before we've left and gone back to class, then is that going to cause a problem, not only for the child that's allergic to walnuts, but also the child that's allergic to dairy? So, you know, we've had conversations with our staff about the fact that, yeah, if you've been enjoying your cake, then you need to wash your hands afterwards. Good COVID practice anyway now. This is where I mean about COVID really helping children with allergies, because we're just washing hands all the time. The other group of people that I've not talked about that we talk to about allergies are all of our volunteers, because in normal times we're really lucky at Fitzmaurice about the number of people that we have volunteering to support the children with their learning in school. And we always make sure that when we do our volunteer sessions every year, that we talk to them about allergies and actually what they're bringing into school. So yeah, thought about it, just reminded me.
The questions are coming in thick and fast on the chat line, so I'll try and I'm conscious of time, but I'll try and fit a few more in. One we've had is, do all children with allergies require care plans?
Could you say that again, please?
Sorry, do all children with allergies require care plans?
If a child has an allergy and they have got medication, then they should have a care plan. So if you're expecting a child to be given antihistamine, because some of my children in school only have antihistamine, they don't have auto-injectors, they still do have a care plan, yes.
I think that's an important one. I know when I've personally spoken to schools, they've had huge problems because parents have said their child have food allergies in inverted commas, and the numbers have been so great and the allergy that has not really seemed to be a possible one, that they've actually asked parents to go back and bring in a signed clinical care plan. Just so, because you obviously have to make such special arrangements for children with allergies, that you have to be sure that the children are actually suffering with food allergies, and it's not just that they don't like, for example, a particular food.
Absolutely, I make it very clear to parents and carers that we can only make those adaptations if we've got a medical letter, if we've got a care plan in place, because there are lots of parents who have told me over the years that their child is allergic to something, and it just doesn't seem to be quite right. It's usually when you probe that they've eaten it once and not really liked it. So don't be frightened of asking for the medical evidence.
Yeah. We've had a number of other questions, but I think probably the best thing to do is to actually take those questions, look at them outside the webinar with you, Tracy, and then we'll put the Q&A as quickly as possible up onto our website. I'd just like to say again, thank you so much on behalf of the Anaphylaxis campaign for doing not one webinar, but 2 webinars on this issue that is clearly so important to so many people. And just to say a big thank you as well to all of the people who are listening to this today. It's great that you are linked in with the Anaphylaxis campaign and are watching this webinar. Do pass it on to colleagues when it's on our website. Our website is www.anaphylaxis.org.uk, but we also have our helpline, which is open from 9 to 5, 5 days a week, but we will respond to emails from you directly as well. And our helpline number, and I must be sure to get this right, is 01252 542 029. That's 01252 542 029. And we're always ready to try and help where we can. So thank you again to Tracy, and I hope that everyone has a fantastic weekend. Thank you.
I hope so too. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you for asking me. Hope everybody has a great weekend.